Welcome to India Inside, the GCC Advantage, a deep dive brought to you by the CoreBridge GCC Desk. Our mission here is really to give global leaders, decision makers like you, clear, authoritative insight into how India's global capability center ecosystem isn't just, supporting global business, but actively shaping its transformation.
Exactly. We focus on translating all that potential into real enterprise-grade capability, helping you navigate what is frankly the most complex and exciting market globally right now.
And today we are diving into maybe the single biggest strategic advantage India has. Its people. This deep dive, India's young talent advantage, we're going to unpack that sheer demographic power, the engine driving the next phase, maybe more importantly, how global firms are now strategically looking beyond the big metros into Tier 2 and Tier 3 cities to really unlock this massive high-quality workforce.
Yeah, let's start with the scale, because the numbers, well, they're genuinely stunning. India's median age, just 28 years. And we're looking at over 500 million people right now in the working age bracket. I mean, this demographic energy, it's the fundamental magnet for global corporations.
Okay, 500 million working age people, that's a huge number. But, I hear global leaders worry sometimes. Is it just a volume game? What about the actual quality? And how fast can you really acquire this talent?
That distinction is absolutely critical. It is definitely not just about volume. Look, by 2030, India is set to contribute over 22% of the world's incremental workforce growth. That alone provides incredible long-term supply chain security for talent. But then you drill down into the specialized technical talent. India produces over 3.5 million STEM graduates every single year.
Wow, 3.5 million annually. That's more intellectual capital replacement, essentially, than the U.S., China, and all of Europe put together. So that's where the quality argument really starts, isn't it?
Precisely. And this young workforce, they come inherently equipped. They're digital natives. You see high proficiency in coding, analytics, data engineering. They speak the language of the modern enterprise.
Okay, but here's where it gets interesting for me. The speed. How quickly are they ready? Do firms have to invest years in specialized training, or?
They learn fast.
Yeah.
And the market, the ecosystem has adjusted. Thanks to this huge ed tech boom and specialized boot camps, we're seeing skill development cycles just shrink dramatically. Skills that maybe used to take 3 years in a traditional university setting, often mastered now in 12 months. So it's rapid upskilling, plus a globally aspirational mindset. And they're comfortable with hybrid work. It makes them, perfectly suited for today's global teams.
So India is really shifting then from just, say, an operational engine or service provider to more of a global capability architect. What does that actually look like for a CXO on the ground?
You can see it clearly in what we call the GCC talent flywheel. Think back to the early 2000s, right? GCCs were mostly doing basic shared services today. They're sophisticated innovation centers. The top 50 GCCs alone now employ over 2.2 million professionals. And that's across advanced fields like AML, data science, cybersecurity.
Okay, interesting. Can you maybe walk us through the stages of that flywheel? You mentioned it's self-reinforcing.
Certainly. It typically begins with, let's call it, initial setup. An MNC launches a pilot, maybe 200, 300 engineers, usually, in a Tier 1 metro like Bangalore or Hyderabad. Stage 2 is capability scaling. And this is where the really smart strategic move happens now. Within, say, 18 to 24 months, they expand, often into Tier 2 clusters, places like Ahmedabad or Indore, perhaps, to access these untapped talent pools and get that cost-effective scale.
Right, and that expansion, presumably, it feeds the next stage of maturity.
Exactly. Stage 3 is leadership localization. This is where your mid to senior level Indian managers who've gained global exposure start leading entire global projects, whole functional teams sometimes. This speeds up decision-making, ensures a better cultural alignment. And then the final stage, the most mature, is innovation ownership. These GCCs transition fully. They start owning products, holding global patents, running entire centers of excellence COEs, directly impacting the parent company's global strategy and India's young, skilled talent. That's the fuel driving that entire cycle.
The scale is just, it's undeniable. But, potential is one thing, activation is another. So let's pivot a bit and look at the boots on the ground reality. How are state governments actually helping convert this raw talent into enterprise capability?
Yeah, this is the crucial policy lens. Because while the demographic dividend is national, the tactical activation, that's happening locally. States are competing fiercely. They're designing very specific GCC policies that essentially aim to remove setup risk for global CXOs looking to invest, especially in these new clusters.
Okay, let's look at an example. Gujarat's GCC policy, the one for 2025 to 2030. What really stands out in their strategy? How are they trying to attract these high-value centers?
Gujarat has set a pretty aggressive goal, creating 50,000 high-value GCC jobs, specifically in R&D and technology. And their strategy, it focuses heavily on de-risking that initial setup. They're offering things like skilling reimbursements, internship grants, significant payroll subsidies, all aimed at reducing that immediate operational cost uncertainty. Plus, they actively encourage university partnerships. And critically, they offer additional financial incentives for companies setting up in Tier 2 clusters, places like Vadodara and Surat, really pushing investment beyond just Ahmedabad.
That focus on Tier 2, it's clearly echoed elsewhere, too. Madhya Pradesh, for instance, launched its 2024 GCC policy. I saw a headline number, 50% payroll support for 3 years. That's the kind of figure that really gets a CXO's attention.
Oh, absolutely. It's a phenomenal de-risking measure.
Yeah.
I mean, think about that. The state is effectively offering to cut your setup risk almost in half by underwriting up to 50% of your labor cost. For the critical first 3 years, that is, for eligible GCCs. It just significantly lowers the barrier to entry to experimentation in a new city.
That's a huge financial carrot, but is there a strategic element tied to it as well? Is it just about cost, or is there an innovation angle?
Definitely an innovation angle. The MP policy ties directly into the national vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047. The mission to make India a developed nation by its centenary. It explicitly links youth employability to innovation, providing things like internship stipends, assistance with filing global patents. It's designed to promote that crucial industry-academia collaboration across key clusters. Bhopal, Indore, Gwalior. So these aren't just, handouts. They're strategic tools designed to build structured, innovation-focused capability.
Policies look impressive on paper, sure, but the proof is always in the execution, isn't it? Let's maybe look at a real-world case. You mentioned Indore. What about the fintech frontier there?
Yes, this is a perfect illustration of how policy can accelerate things. A major U.S.-based fintech leader, they operate in something like 17 countries. They chose Indore to launch a 300-member analytics GCC back in 2022, focused on AI-driven fraud detection. And notice, they didn't pick a traditional Tier 1 city. They went straight for Tier 2.
Interesting. So what were the main drivers then? What pushed them towards Indore specifically? Maybe the top 3.
Okay, first, immediate access to that youthful engineering talent. The average employee age at this specific GCC, just 26, very young. Second, those financial incentives under MP's policy were key. They calculated it reduced their operating costs by nearly 30% in the first 2 years alone. And third, strategic access to academic partners like IIT Indore and DAVV University, which is actually one of the largest talent feeders in central India.
Right, the talent pipeline. So what was the measurable impact on the global business, say, within just 24 months of setting up in Indore?
The results came fast, and they were high impact, that GCC. They developed 2 proprietary machine learning models, filed for global patents, and got some reimbursement under the state's patent support clause. They managed to reduce global fraud detection latency by 22%. But maybe the most telling metric, especially for long-term capability building, is attrition. Their attrition rate stabilized at under 9%.
Wow. Under 9%. You compare that to, what, maybe 18% or higher sometimes in established Tier 1 hubs? That's not just a cost saving. That's almost doubling your team stability. Institutional memory, knowledge retention, that feels like the strategic gold standard Tier 2 can offer.
That really is the core trend we're seeing. Our research confirms it. Tier 2 cities, Ahmedabad, Indore, Vadodara, Bhopal, they are delivering lower, much more predictable attrition rates, usually somewhere between 8% and 12%. Compare that to the often volatile 18% to 25% you might see in the saturated metros.
And that stability, combined with the sheer size of the talent pool available, it fundamentally changes the strategic calculation for companies, doesn't it?
It absolutely does.
Yeah.
Western and Central India alone, they house over 1,500 engineering and management colleges that feed these clusters. Plus, you can't ignore the quality of life factor. Younger employees in these emerging cities often seek more affordable, perhaps more family-friendly lifestyles, and that translates directly into higher retention. Then you couple that with a rapidly improving infrastructure, new airports popping up, dedicated co-working clusters, robust broadband becoming standard, and, well, the next chapter of India's talent story is pretty clearly unfolding outside the major metros.
Okay. So if we put on the hat of a global CXO, someone making, say, a decade-long capital allocation decision, what are the big overarching strategic implications here?
Well, the primary implication is pretty clear. India's combination of scale, quality, and importantly, sustainable cost and technology talent. It's unmatched globally. This youth-driven scalability is, arguably, the nation's strongest strategic moat right now. It ensures capability continuity well into the future.
And the youth readiness itself, that provides a kind of bedrock for long-term planning, right?
Exactly. With over 65% of the population under 35 years old, global companies can actually construct, with confidence, 20-year capability roadmaps. Knowing there's a highly predictable, sustainable workforce supply curve, the talent simply won't run out.
And looping back to those state incentives, we discussed the payroll subsidies. Skilling reimbursements, they do more than just reduce setup costs. They critically lower the cost of experimentation for firms entering India or maybe expanding into a new Tier 2 location for the first time.
Right. And that move to Tier 2, it isn't just about short-term cost reduction. It's about long-term sustainability. These newer ecosystems offer lower real estate costs, yes, but crucially better talent retention. And the ability to establish deeper local roots, all of which makes those GCCs inherently more resilient, more stable assets over the long haul.
This is precisely where the CoreBridge GCC Desk really aims to add strategic value. Our role is to help translate this huge national advantage into enterprise-grade, actionable capability for MNCs. We don't just point to the potential, we really help you map out that journey.
Yeah, we partner across the ecosystem. We help design tailored skilling pipelines that align perfectly with your specific GCC tech needs, whether that's AI, cybersecurity, cloud engineering, whatever it might be. We provide that critical city-level workforce ecosystem mapping for genuine Tier 2 readiness, which is frankly essential for de-risking any expansion decisions.
And we actively help with the policy navigation too, optimizing those incentives. We work with state governments to ensure you capture the maximum strategic and financial benefit from those policies we talked about, really supporting that entire transition process from maybe just a pilot project concept all the way to establishing large-scale sustainable operations.
So for you, our listener, the message here is pretty compelling, I think. India's young population. It's the foundational layer of the world's next great capability network. And it's supported by these strategic policy frameworks, collaborative academia. The future workforce isn't just coming, it's already here, and it's ready to scale.
The message really is clear. Invest where the future works. Invest in India's young talent. We definitely encourage CXOs, global leaders, to connect with us at the CoreBridge GCC Desk for deeper engagement, for consultative advice on crafting your own custom talent and scale-up strategy in India.
And you can also explore our CoreBridge curated resources, policy insights, including a detailed study guide on the state policies and Tier 2 growth corridors we explored today. You'll find that guide linked right in the description below.
We genuinely believe that by making these strategic investments now, you can really shape the next decade of global capability leadership right from India. Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
And next time, we'll be exploring how India is stepping up to secure the global digital supply chain. We'll look at specialized GCC cybersecurity centers, a topic absolutely critical for pretty much any global organization today.
So do subscribe to India Inside, the GCC Advantage, to make sure you don't miss our ongoing strategic market intelligence.
And just a quick note, the information presented today synthesizes publicly available state policies and industry reports. As always, decision makers should verify current GCC policy details and incentive structures directly using official state portals and the original source documents.